the new scoff lunch just
Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to the first episode of March 8's Roundtable series, a series where we aim to raise awareness, provide knowledge, and start the conversation around women issues. So I'm really excited for today. We are taking on the topic of women's health, as October is Menopause Awareness Month and September was PCOS Awareness Month. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. So kind of that's the topic of today's conversation, and we'll be joined by some guests later on. So please join us, everyone, for the next 45 minutes where we discuss the unknown data of endometriosis and menopause, how to deal with these issues in the workplace as an employer, as well as encouraging open conversations around women's health to break the taboo. So we aim for this to be an educational and positive session. So please feel free to write comments and messages in the chat box. If we can, we'll be sure to read them out and give you a shout out as well. So before we begin, we also did a poll on our LinkedIn on today's topic to kind of discuss the visibility of women's health issues in business and how high on a priority list are they to employers. So the question we asked is, what percentage of FTSE 100 companies failed to publish menopause policies? I will now pop the link in the chat for you all to go and vote. If not, you can find it on March 8's LinkedIn page. So we've got some answers and we want you to choose which one you think it is. So is it 25%, 37%, 55%, or 60%? So go vote on the poll in chat and let us know what you think. At the end of the show, we will announce the correct answer. As always, for today, I'm excited to welcome our co-host to the stage. So obviously, March 8's editor-in-chief, Lucy, is here. So please welcome her.
Hi, Emily. Hello. It's great to be back on LinkedIn Lives, and especially to talk about women's health, which is obviously such an important topic.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm excited to be back. It feels like a while. I'm in a new place, moved house. A lot of things have happened since the last one. So let's kind of kick off the conversation, me and you. Can you tell us why it's so important that we kind of raise awareness and have these conversations that we're having today?
Of course. Well, women's health is unfortunately seen as a taboo topic, and it's often one that feels uncomfortable to bring up in conversations, especially in the workplace. But as women, we face a number of health issues that can drastically impact our careers, such as menopause, endometriosis, and, as you mentioned, PCOS. However, 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis. 4% to 20% of women of reproductive age worldwide have PCOS, which is obviously a really varying statistic. And an estimated 1.3 million women in the US enter menopause every year. So these stats kind of speak for themselves, and it's really important to highlight and normalize these topics and to ensure that women are getting the support they need both inside and outside of the workplace.
Yeah, and obviously I couldn't agree more. You know that this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I was diagnosed with PCOS some years ago and have friends and close family who suffer with endometriosis. So I do kind of get to see the impact that has on day-to-day life. And it kind of still shocks me, the lack of action that workforces take. I get to see that, my auntie especially, who does suffer. But also, you know, TMI, but on Saturday, she had to walk out of a cinema mid-movie because my period pains were so bad. And this kind of like sparked some conversations in my head, kind of thinking, you know, if I can't sit in a cinema watching a movie of my choice with popcorn and a drink, doing something that I want to be doing, you know, how can I be expected to get up in the morning, commute into an office, sit and concentrate at a desk and feel comfortable doing my job? And that's obviously, you know, a period, you get that once a month, if you have a regular cycle. So if that's happening every month, this needs to be considered, basically. And I think that that's kind of a story that a lot of women can relate to. It's a bit of an uncomfortable time and sometimes an uncomfortable topic, but that's kind of why we're here today, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, firstly, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. But as you mentioned, that we all at points experience pain and discomfort, which is not always manageable. And being in a workplace makes it even more challenging. But that being said, there are some countries out there that are trying to do their bit to make employees feel more comfortable when they're suffering these cramps and pains. So, for example, Spain made headlines earlier in the year for becoming the first Western country to offer unlimited menstrual leave for women who can provide a doctor's note. So I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I think, that should be the norm across most places. But now we've kind of covered the data behind endometriosis and menopause and PCOS. To help us learn more about these women's health topics today and how they can be dealt with in the workplace, we have invited on some experts to join us. Before I introduce them, however, please enjoy this short ad break. It's just a fun little video that Lucy filmed in the BizClick headquarters in Norwich to kind of challenge our colleagues on how much they know about women's health. So enjoy this video. We'll be back shortly to start the roundtable and start the questions.
Hi everyone, today the March 8 team wanted to test the officers' knowledge on women's health. So let's see how much they know. Hi Kaylee, can we ask you a quick question about women's health please? So today's question is, what percentage of women do you think have endometriosis?
I'm gonna say 23%.
I'm not too sure.
What percentage?
Maybe 30% of women, I would think.
23%, that's quite a good guess, but it's actually less than that. It's 10% of women have endometriosis, which actually is quite a lot when you think that it's 1 in 10.
Yeah.
No, maybe like 3%. I'm not too sure, to be fair.
10% of women actually have it, but that's actually quite a lot when you think that it's 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis. And this is something that's a really bad condition that you have to have surgery for, and it's really bad. So
yeah, keep raising the awareness about it. Very important. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, James. No problem. Hi Joe, do you mind if I ask you a quick question from March 8, please?
Sure, go ahead.
So how many women do you think have left their jobs because of their menopause? So 1 in 100, 1 in 50, or 1 in 10?
I would say 1 in 50.
Say 1 in 50?
Yeah, I'm going to go 1 in 50 as well.
And you would say?
Whatever they said.
No.
1 out of 50.
I'm going to say 1 in 50.
You are wrong.
1 in 50? 1 in 50?
Ooh. That is the most popular answer, but it is actually wrong. 1 in 10.
Seriously? Why is that? That really surprises me.
I think there's obviously a lot of different reasons as to why, but a lot of it is lack of support, lack of flexibility, lack of understanding, and also quite a lot of people feel that their colleagues don't take them seriously and they make fun of their issues and things like that.
Wow, that really does surprise me a lot actually. I would think that more people would read about it and then they would be able to go and get support.
I'll probably say 1 in 10.
1 in 10?
Yeah.
You're correct, and you're the first person that got the correct answer. Why do you say that?
Because I think it is a much more bigger problem than people think it is.
And you've read my articles, of course.
And that too.
How many countries have legislative laws allowing women to take menstrual leave?
I don't know. 6?
6.
Really?
3. It's slightly higher than 3.
5?
5 is actually 6.
Okay.
Yeah, which is actually quite good. Hello, Kieran, Drew. Guess which countries you think actually have them? So there's 6.
Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, Scotland, Canada, France, Germany,
Spain,
Yeah.
Italy, the UK.
And they are Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Zambia, Indonesia, and Spain. Not even the UK.
Low, but I think I'm shocked that maybe more Western countries haven't joined in with this.
I love that video. You look like you had so much fun running around the office. I
It
love
was
it.
actually a lot of fun, you know. It was really
Yeah,
interesting
no, I
also
think
to
it's good.
just hear different people's perspective on actually, you know, how much they actually knew. Quite shocking.
Yeah. I mean, Matt was the only person to get that answer right, which I think is interesting. He must be an avid reader of March 8. But yeah, no, I think it's a good little video. It kind of, obviously, it's just a bit of fun, but it just kind of gets that conversation started. So hopefully that's today's kind of a follow-on from that, really. So we're now going to introduce our experts who are joining us today to help us raise awareness and give us the kind of lowdown on women's health in the workplace. So next up, please welcome to the virtual stage a menopause trainer and consultant, Hallie White and Stephanie Reed from Menopause Experts.
Hi.
Hi, Vi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me today.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us. Like I said, you are the expert panel in today's roundtable. You're going to be the ones hopefully providing us with all the information that we need to kind of kickstart these conversations. So I'm going to hand it over to Lucy now, and she can kind of start the conversation for us.
Cool. Well, just before we jump right in, I just wanted to see if you guys can just tell us a little bit more about yourselves and what you do, and yeah, just introduce yourselves briefly, really.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I'm Haley White. Stephanie is my colleague. We met through working together at Menopause Experts Group. We both deliver training. And although we've got similar experiences, I'm starting at the beginning of my menopause journey, and Stephanie will tell you about hers, but she's coming at the end of hers. And I started with this because I've been delivering training for about 10 years now, all around mental health at work. And then at the beginning of this year, I realised that things are starting to change biologically for me, psychologically for me. And I've got a degree and a master's in psychology, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. So that was a bit worrying and a bit frightening. And spoke to a few friends, and they mentioned about the perimenopause, and I had absolutely no idea what that was, to be honest, which is just shocking, really. And I was having some biological issues, so I had to go and get some tests done at the hospital, and I was actually diagnosed with being perimenopausal. So whether that's lucky or unlucky, whatever way you want to look at it, I found out. So I'd just turned 43 then, but a lot of health professionals would say that I was too young, which isn't the case. I'm proof of that. And from that, I thought, well, why aren't we talking about it? What are we doing about it? And what can I do about it? And that's what set me on the journey to learn more and to get into training.
Amazing. And how about yourself, Stephanie?
Yes, as Haley rightly says, I'm the light at the end of the tunnel. It does get better. You do come through this, and things do go back to normality. And that's important to get out there because it's a normal, natural thing that we go through. That's what the menopause is. It's just that we live in a society where we have a lot of stress, and that doesn't interact well with the menopause and with your hormones. So that's one of the reasons why we have a more difficult menopause in the West compared to other cultures. I started in this journey because I've been a trainer and consultant in the private and voluntary sector for 30 years, done a lot of work in mental health, and my last position was head of diversity and inclusion. And out of that work, I started doing stuff around the menopause because I was in the middle of it. I was 47, 48. Having dreadful symptoms, didn't know I was, Dr. Google was my friend. So I had brain cancer, I had MS, I had everything under the sun except for the menopause, but I was having all these symptoms. So I was looking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, oh, I'm dying. Oh, I'm dying. This was every night nearly. And then, find out, no, it's actually the menopause you're going through. That's why you're having all these things wrong with you and you feel so awful. And it was like, so where do I go and get help? Where do I go and get support? Where do I go and find out what I can do for myself, and there was nothing. So that's where I started my journey, was researching and finding things out and going on courses to learn as much as I possibly can, because it's frightening that as women, we don't know about hormones and the role they play in our whole health, not just our physical health, not just our reproductive health, but our mental health. You know, and it's about having that empowerment and giving women that empowerment. This is what's happening to you. Here's what you could do about it. And you can make informed decisions about your health. And that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely, and that actually links me back to what you mentioned earlier, Hallie, about the perimenopause. You mentioned when you first started experiencing it, you didn't know what it was and you didn't know much about it. For those listening who don't know much about it, could you just give a brief overview of it, and also like some of the symptoms that maybe people could look out for?
Well, the symptoms can vary greatly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, there are over 50 symptoms. And that could include hair loss. It could include losing teeth, bleeding gums. Stephanie had an unusual one, which was getting electric shocks, forgetfulness, brain fog, depression, anxiety. The list is just huge.
Skin issues, you know, some women can have a return of acne. The majority of women will have dry skin because that's where you lose the collagen and the moisture and all of that stuff. So that's why you get saggy skin, you get wrinkles. You're not as firm as what you were. That's for the majority, but like nearly 30% get a return of acne. And that's not one we'll talk about as well. So there's lots of things can happen to you within the menopause, and it's just knowing that, you know, having those 50 symptoms out there, so you know, like, okay, a small percentage like me, something like 15-20% get electric shocks. I didn't know that. I took up all the carpets in my house. Because I thought
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
my daughter's 18, and we joke and I go, you'll be in therapy for the rest of your life, because she was a wee child and I'd be coming in from work and go to lift her up and she'd go, Mommy, and I'd go to lift her and she'd go, Jaggy. So there's a poor child's going to have therapy for the rest of it. The one person supposed to love me and be comfort to me is hurting me. It's just like giving me electric shocks.
Wow. I mean, things like that, I just don't think are spoken about enough, are they? And I mean, even though I feel like I've researched this topic a fair bit now from articles and just trying to raise awareness in general, I've still never heard of that. So I think, as you mentioned earlier, Stephanie, about how it can be a really scary time for women because you have no idea what these symptoms are. And as you said, Google is awful, isn't it? When you could just have like a slight arm ache or something and then you're, doomed. So, but just in general as well, not just menopausal, but with women's health issues in general, how why do you think that it's so many women leave their careers because of these kind of health issues, and how can that be prevented?
To me, it's about awareness raising. It's about understanding that, these things actually can impact you beyond the physical side. There is a psychological side, and that's the side I feel that we don't know enough about, and we haven't been given enough information. So when you start to lose confidence in yourself, or you're standing up giving a presentation and every bit of information goes out of your head, like when you get brain fog, and you're standing there looking at an audience of maybe 50 and you can't remember your own name, that can be very frightening. But if you know that's a symptom, and also there are triggers that can happen to you beforehand to make that worse. So we know stress is not good. So if you're getting very stressed about something and you go to do it, you're more likely to experience a symptom and it will be exasperated. So if you know what, I'm not going to get myself excited, I'm going to make sure I have a nice calm morning before I do my presentation, I'm going to be at home, I'm going to be relaxed, I'm going to do this. So therefore, when you go to give your presentation, you're less likely to have a symptom that can be triggered by stress. So it's about knowing about that. It's about having the right support, maybe in the workplace. And that can be anything from really simple environmental stuff, like you have an office and you have Johnny, the young guy who's 20 at the window, and Mary, who's 50, sitting sweating in the corner, swap them over. That doesn't cost anything. It's about being practical, and simple solutions to it. It's about looking at flexible working. You're having trouble sleeping. You can't make an 8 o'clock start at 10 and work to 6, or work from home, or whatever. Just as we've been through this last 2 years, there's a variety of combinations that can be used to facilitate you still working. But with a lot of women, 1 in 10, that's the ones who leave work, but there's up to 25% of women change jobs, reduce their hours, or don't go for promotion because they don't feel they can, because they feel that this is overwhelming at this point in time. And it is a period, it's a transition, it will pass.
As well, it's about the organisations being proactive as opposed to reactive. So having the likes of Stephanie and I coming in and doing training, not assuming that their workforce is young women and it won't happen to them, because it can happen. The youngest recorded person that it's happened to was only 14 years old. So don't make the mistake of thinking it only happens to women from the mid-40s onwards, because that is a complete fallacy. Having policies in place already, having menopause champions in place, so that women, when they're going through this, know that the support is already there and they don't feel frightened to go and speak about it and to ask for the support. Getting members of the senior leadership team on board, finding out, is there somebody within the organisation, within the senior leadership team, who is going through it or has been through it, and getting them on board as well. So it's all of these different things.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of covered my next question. I was going to ask about how can we make workplaces more inclusive? But if you had to kind of round it up into maybe what top 3 things can workplaces do to start these conversations or make the environment more suited for women going through the menopause, what would you say? So Hallie, I'll throw it to you.
Staff training is key, because that creates the awareness, that starts the conversations going, and not just for women, for men as well. There's obviously a little bit of, well, not a little bit, there's a big barrier when women who are perimenopausal and menopausal have male, especially younger male bosses, line managers. So there's a barrier there. So educating them. And then on a practical level, uniform is a big one. Would you agree, Stephanie? I think uniform, making sure that the uniform is breathable, it's cotton, it's not polyester, somebody isn't going to be really hot in it, that kind of stuff. And
that it's well designed so that there's movement in it as well, because that's what they always forget about, that, we do move and we need to be able to do that,
And it goes without saying, having clean and available washroom facilities. And some organisations now have started to put female sanitary products in the toilets, which is absolutely fantastic. So the small things make all the difference, make a massive difference.
Yeah. And there's also that to expand on that diversity thing, we're talking about women as in, us, but, menopause happens to, trans, menopause happens to, people of different ethnicities. It also has it has an impact on disabled people as well, or people with underlying health conditions. The menopause can actually exacerbate some conditions like MS, like arthritis, like fibromyalgia and stuff like that there. So it's much bigger than just women. It's not just that wee group. There's an awful lot of us, and then there's a lot of subgroups within that, and it's even like sort of women in same-sex relationships. We sort of think, oh, they'll have an easy time. That's 2 women together. Maybe not. There's a lot of issues there, and especially when you start going into stuff like, intimacy and relationships and vaginal dryness and stuff like that there, which actually impacts an awful lot of women. It's like nearly 40% of women would have vaginal dryness. So there's so much. But the first steps is, talking about it, getting people in, raising awareness, having sessions, be it anything from this is the menopause to, diet, nutrition advice or whatever about that, but bring it in some shape or form. It's looking at having, policies that work and that policies that are actually cascaded out so that everybody in the organization knows about them. And it comes back down to, as Hayley says, there is a high profile person within the organization who's driving this. It's not just, it has to be an organic thing. It has to be, top down really for it to work properly.
Yeah. And I think you both kind of mentioned that it's a key part of this is raising awareness and starting conversations. And, when I think about how, I have a great work group of girls, and we're quite open. We're very open. We talk about all sorts of things. And I think that helps. That's something that, when you have a tight-knit group and you're happy to confine in them, then it makes these conversations a lot easier. So I guess when you kind of get to talking to your employer and raising these conversations with them, how would you suggest you do it? How would you suggest that these conversations begin? I know you said it starts from the top down, but, if we want to get involved, if we want to start raising it, then how do we do so?
Well, again, it could be something like organizing something like we're having a lunchtime menopause chat. A lot of I've done training with banks and universities and stuff, and part of the legacy we leave with them is setting up support groups within the workplace. So a menopause group will be set up within the workplace, and that could meet every 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe have somebody in to talk about your diet 1 week, or the next month look at fitness, or even just having the facility to sit down and talk to each other. Because it's those sessions, as Hayley would tell you, when we do the sessions, it's the question and answer that happens after the training session is where all the work gets done.
Yeah.
And that's where we find the greatest feedback. And I find that, and I do a lot of programs actually in the community as well, working with community and women's organizations. And it's those wee chats we have at the end that are the best. Because they're all just, oh, I do this. Oh, you're having trouble sleeping. Try this. I do this or whatever. Oh, yes, I suffered from that. And it's just that conversation, and that is just brilliant to see. And that's organic, and that is what you want to have in an organization. It's that from the ground up.
Yeah, the sharing of the experience.
Yeah.
And like you said, Emily, the connection, and just start talking about it.
And it could be certain, funny, like coming in, oh, I've had a terrible morning, I forgot this or I forgot that, I include, talking about, because that is one of the things, your memory does go to hell and it's dreadful. And I remember one morning going out to work in school with my daughter, couldn't find the car keys, had the place in uproar, was shouting at her, we were getting more and more flustered. 30 minutes later, I looked and I had the keys in my hand the entire time. We had been looking for it. I sent her off to school in tears. I go into work, I'm a complete mess, and I'm sitting there. It took me an hour to be able to actually, function to do work because I was so guilty. I was beating myself up by being a bad mother, and it was just a simple, stupid thing, but you blow it out of all proportion.
Absolutely, you kind of want to be going to work and you want to have a really supportive environment around you where you feel like you can actually discuss these issues openly and there's no judgment, and that you are getting everything that you need to actually do the best in your career. But on a similar topic, on a similar note, what advice would you give to other women who are starting to experience these symptoms, to how they can manage and how they can kind of like start the transition?
First and foremost is to fill out a symptom tracker, and we have them that we give out with our training, but you can also, there's the Balance app is available online. It's for free. And that just takes you through all the symptoms. And it's a matter of, yeah, I get hot flushes. Yeah, they're severe, they're mild, or yeah, and it has all the symptoms listed. And it just gives you a good thing to actually look at and go, oh, yes, this is where I'm at. And then that's the first step. If you're going to go to your healthcare professional, they need to have that evidence. They need to see these are your symptoms, because you won't necessarily be diagnosed by a blood test, because your hormones are different at 9 o'clock in the morning than they are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's very hard to get a proper, reading from a blood test. And then they'll also say they're within normal. Now, normal's that. So you could be within side, and that could be the good side. So it's about, sort of finding out, where you are. And first and foremost is get your information about what you're going through. It's a normal, natural transition. There are things you can do, and I know it's boring. The thing you're going to do the most that's going to improve everything for you is what you put into your body. So what you eat is really going to have a massive, massive impact. Movement, exercise, whatever way you do it is going to have a massive impact. Taking time for yourself, be that meditation, mindfulness, going out for a walk, really, really, really important at this time. And even if you do HRT, you're still going to need to do all those things, because HRT is not a silver bullet. You still need to do the other stuff. Hayley, what else would you?
Caffeine is a good one. Keeping a journal of what works for you and what doesn't. So, for example, with caffeine, some women, caffeine brings on hot flushes, where for others it doesn't. So and eating spicy foods, etc. So if you keep a record and a journal of what's working and what doesn't work, then you're really prepared at all times, which is brilliant. Planning your day. So for a lot of women, they feel more energized, and the brain is working a lot better in the mornings up until the afternoon, and then they have a slump. So if you need to do all of your difficult tasks in the morning, then do that. And it's been adaptive, and again, being proactive as well, and just looking at ways that you can tweak things to make your life a lot easier and your working life a lot easier.
Yeah, and you need to learn to manage your stress. And the other thing is also to get a good sleep routine now. Really work on your sleep, because insomnia is one of the big, big, big symptoms of the menopause. And that's because progesterone puts you to sleep and keeps you asleep. So when that starts to fluctuate, your sleep goes all over the place. And we now know that, of course, sleep deprivation is used as a torture technique, because it does impact you mentally and physically the next day. So really looking at and developing and getting yourself as good a sleep routine as you possibly can, as early as you can, will be really, really beneficial.
And the big thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is that we're getting all of these symptoms because we're losing estrogen in our bodies, the hormone estrogen, and every part of our body is affected by our estrogen levels. So there's things that you can do to help replace that as well. So you can have foods you could start having foods that are high in phytoestrogens. So that's things like garlic, chickpeas, lentils, onions, what else?
Soy products. Soy products, tofu, tempeh, all of those things are very, very high. Sesame seed and the tahini. So basically, making a wee bowl of hummus is really, really good, because chickpeas are high in phytoestrogens. Garlic is a phytoestrogen. Tahini paste is very, very high in phytoestrogens. And it's simple to make that up. And there's a great wee snack that's doing you really good, because what phytoestrogens do is they balance out what hormones you have. So it's about balancing what you have, so you don't actually have as much of that highs and lows as possible. So And if you look at the likes of Southeast Asia, Japan and China and South Korea, the women there have a much shorter menopause than we do in the West. Their menopause lasts on average about 4 years. Ours is 8 to 10 years. They don't have necessarily the same type of symptoms. They wouldn't have hot flushes. In fact, they don't even have a word for hot flushes. Their thing would be a menopause shoulder and would be headaches and would be sort of lowish mood. Would be their most prevalent ones. But again, it's a 4 years compared to 8 years. Less symptoms, and it's primarily to do with their diet, their lifestyle, the type of exercise, and the way they go about their lives. Sort of quite a lot of meditation and meditative practices in those countries. But the big thing is the culture. They look at menopause differently than we look at it here. We look at it as a negative thing. It's going through the menopause. The head tilt. Oh dear. Oh, poor you. You know, there's that type of attitude towards it. You know, it's the end of being a woman, of being sexy, of being fertile, of being, it's end. You're always being told it's the end of, end of, end of. Whereas in those cultures, it's the beginning of. They call it the second spring. They look upon it as, you know, the next stage in their life. You know, elders are revered and respected. It's a completely different attitude. So that could have something, I think, to do with their experience of the menopause.
Yeah, I think what I'm picking up like through this conversation is that it's like a very personal journey. So it seems like, you know, there's different symptoms for everyone. You've kind of got to manage this somewhat by yourself. Do you think that's why it's kind of one of them topics that people feel a bit cautious to bring up, because they don't know if people are going to have the same symptoms? They don't know if people completely understand what they're going through. Is that what makes it maybe like slightly taboo, do you think?
It could
There
be that,
is.
but sorry, Stephanie, it could be that, but also a lot of women don't know what they're going through, or that they are going through that. That's the issue. Some women think that they've got early onset dementia, so it's them not knowing. And also, it doesn't help that a lot of medical practitioners, GPs in particular, misdiagnose women. So if a woman's experiencing symptoms and she goes to a GP, often they'll be put on antidepressants when it's actually not a mental health issue. Some of the symptoms can cause mental health issues such as depression and anxiety, but in of itself it is not a mental health issue. So it's all about education and awareness, really, I think, and probably they're scared to talk about it because they don't know what's happening to them. Anything to add, Stephanie?
Yeah, it is, especially around that psychological side, because a lot of women don't know that, you know, symptoms are an increase in anger. It's low mood. It's that sort of, you lose the interest in, why should I bother? You know, I can't be annoyed doing that anymore. It's that sort of losing that joy to breathe. And that's very hard to explain, to go into a doctor's office and go, I don't find enjoyment in things anymore. And, you know, that's where it usually starts for a lot of women. And they don't realize that psychological side is, you know, is massive. And the fact that anxiety is caused by the fact that progesterone eases anxiety. So as that starts to fluctuate, your anxiety levels go haywire. And I used to, because I never had anxiety before I went through the menopause, and then I was having it nearly every day. And I would be turning the car around and coming back home and checking that I had locked the door and I'd turned the gas off, because it was so convinced there had to be a reason for this anxiety. So I was sort of automatically thinking, well, I must have left something on, or I left my daughter somewhere, or, you know, I've done something. But it wasn't. It was just anxious. And then once I got that's what that was, I was able to deal with it. But while I was having that and not knowing what was happening to me, and then the palpitations would start, I thought I was having a heart attack one night and had myself dead and buried, and everybody at the funeral the next day. You know, there was nothing wrong with me. It was just, you know, whatever the menopause was. But
Mm.
it's again, it's those not knowing and women getting themselves into states like that. And while I'm making light of it, and but it wasn't funny at that particular time. But it's as Haley says, we don't have enough healthcare professionals. You know, they've said themselves, they've been they were surveyed at the beginning of this year by King's College, and over 70% of them said we need education, because we might have received half a day when we did our degree, and that was 20 years ago. So they need to be trained, they need to be aware that they can recognize symptoms, and women need to understand and know what their symptoms are so they can recognize them as well. So it's about education in both camps, both for the women and both for healthcare professionals.
Yeah, and work, and obviously workplaces as well. And you know, another factor in all of this is the demographics, because the retirement age has increased. We've got more menopausal women at work than ever before. Like 4.5 million women that are in work are menopausal, and they're the biggest demographic in the workplace. And again, workplaces need to start realizing this and like doing what they can to hang on to these women, because these women are probably the most experienced people that they've got within the workplace. So they need to be doing what they can to help them and to not be losing them, because I think last year 900,000 women left work because of this. So
yeah. And then there's the other side of it. There's the employment tribunal sides. There was 5 in 2015. There was over 20 last year, and the women have won every one of them. So from a business point of view, it's actually makes more sense to actually do the training and have this stuff in place before you get into a situation like that.
Yeah, and we do a lot around, as we all know, mental health and well-being, but this and other women's health issues are still excluded. So that needs to change.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's a lack of awareness on kind of everybody's part. It's even like mainly the employers actually need to make it a more safe and inclusive environment for everybody. And it's also that we need to actually help women understand what we're going to be going through and what to really expect, without making it seem, like Stephanie said earlier, doom and gloom. So I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to kind of be like, you know what, it's not a bad thing, it's just a part of life. And you know, most of us are going to go through it, but it's how you kind of change your mindset into be a positive way and kind of support each other and be there for each other, and just kind of make sure we're still utilizing our skills and, you know, doing what we can in our careers without having to be like pushed out the door. And I think I read a stat earlier as well. I think it was like 8% of women don't go for promotions because of their menopausal symptoms and like lack of confidence. Like that's a massive amount of people when you think about it. And it's just such a shame, isn't it, that we haven't progressed that as much yet, you know?
Yeah, but I think
absolutely
things are changing, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think as well, I've seen a lot out of COVID. There was a lot of women kind of launching their own business, and I think that was kind of, in a way, kind of women just writing their own rules, like being able to be the ones to build these inclusive workplace environments, recognizing that flexible working was really good for mothers and those going through these health issues, and having to juggle being a teacher and a mom and all these things. We're writing our own rules, and we're kind of starting these conversations to make the workplace exactly how it needs to be for everyone. Like, it needs to be an inclusive and diverse place. So I think that's kind of why we were so passionate to do today's topic, is because it kind of gets a little bit under the radar. Sometimes it isn't one of them things that gets spoken about, but here we are. That's what we're here to raise awareness for. And obviously, thank you so much, Stephanie and Hallie, for your time today and for what you do in your careers to raise awareness and be part of the conversation. We think it's obviously massively important. So it is time to wrap up now, unfortunately, our roundtable with Stephanie and Hallie. But I just want to thank them both so much from me and Lucy and the team at March 8. It's been great to have them here. We will just go after of course. We will discuss the poll answers now shortly. But it was lovely to have them on. So before we overrun too much, let's open up the poll and see what everyone thought. So to remind you all what the poll question was, it was to look at the visibility of what workplaces are doing around the menopause. So what percentage of FTSE 100 companies failed to publish a menopause policy? We had the answers as 25%, 37%, 55%, and 60%. And the most highly voted by the public was 60%. And unfortunately, I will say that they are correct. So I think for the first time on our poll, the majority of people actually got the correct answer. So it was 60% of FTSE 100 companies failed to publish a menopause policy. So obviously, that's awful. That's over half. These conversations are hopefully going to be the reason that these change. Maybe we should start asking ourselves, how can we change that? How can we make that number lower? And how can we start kind of normalizing these conversations and make them less taboo? Because as you can see here today, there was nothing wrong with this conversation. It was just a group of ladies talking about something that they experience. And I think it's really bizarre that women's health is kind of seen as a funny and weird topic, and periods are weird to talk about. It's like we get them every month. It is what it is. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up today's conversation. Hopefully you can walk away with some questions and some answers, and start these conversations. So a huge thank you to Stephanie and Hallie for joining us. And that kind of wraps up today's roundtable on women's health. So thank you, everyone. Don't forget to follow March 8 and tune in next month for another roundtable. We'll see you then.